Let's go to Canberra now. I want to catch up with Pauline Hanson. And Pauline, I was telling our viewers earlier, reminding them about how the Coalition yesterday highlighted how taxpayers' money, more than $600,000, was going to one of these mosques that was glorifying the death of the former Ayatollah, the former supreme leader of Iran, Ali Khamenei. Now, glorifying that, they were actually referring him to him as a martyr and celebrating his martyrdom, Pauline. Now, the government have responded to that. They say they're now freezing that funding. Is that a good outcome?
Of course it is, to freeze the funding by all means. I had a former Muslim that actually wrote to me and he said, Pauline, you said, you're exactly right and what you're exposing here in Australia. And he said, especially in Arncliffe, he said the hatred they're spreading in that mosque and also, again, the martyrdom of this man. And it has to stop. And I want to see intervention and we need to know what's going on. I hope they come down hard on these mosques.
Well, the IRGC is a declared terrorist entity now, and these people are effectively celebrating or commemorating or glorifying the leader of the former leader of that terrorist organisation. So the legal aspect is fascinating. There have been suggestions the AFP are investigating, but I think more to the point, Pauline, it's such a worry in this country that we know we have people living here, and we don't know how many, but certainly significant numbers of people who do glorify this man.
Yes, they do. And that's the radical Islam, Chris, that I keep talking about all the time. And, you know, this former Muslim, you know, people of a certain faith that can live in our country in peace and harmony, want that peace and harmony. But, you know, my concern is, you know, we really need to keep on top of it and make sure we know what we're doing and, you know, pull in those ones that don't have our best interest at heart, our culture, our way of life and peace in this nation. That's all my concern is, Chris.
Now, you know that I rail against anything that will seek to demonise all Muslims in this country, and you've been through the ringer on that point in recent weeks. But one of the keys here is Muslim voices. You talked about Muslim people writing to you, but we need to hear Muslim community leaders calling out this sort of celebration, this sort of glorification, not leaving it to everybody else. Well,
I was just reading a book at the moment, Chris, and it's quite interesting that I read, is that these imams and these mullahs are not really religious leaders. They are there as the rulers and commanders for ensuring that we have Sharia law. So, you know, behind the scenes, what is really happening in this country? And I think that's very important. You know, you think they're religious leaders, they're only pushing their own agenda of what they want onto their own people. Radicalisation is happening, slowly it's happening. And I'd like to see what's happening, being taught in some of these Muslim schools as well. I don't think we're across it. We just take it for granted in this country and we're just fed this load of rubbish. And it's going to slowly, you know, impinge on us till we will get to a point we will not be able to control the changes that are happening in this country. That's my concern about everything. And I keep saying this over and over again. All you have to do is have a look at England, what's happened over there. They thought, no, they're appeasing these people of multiculturalism and everything that goes with it. But that country is in one hell of a mess. It's a basket case at the moment. And I do not want Australia to become like that.
We'll be crossing the UK to catch up with some of those issues in just a moment. But I mentioned before that you were censured by the Senate. It's pretty much a standing censure against you these days, Pauline. But the debate over this was pretty ugly, I've got to say, especially from Lydia Thorpe. Here's some of that.
I wish you would actually start fighting for the Australian people. They're here listening to you.
Senator Hanson.
They want some representation here. She just called me a bitch.
Senator Thorpe, do you have a point of order?
I do. I just got called a bitch by the racist.
Good Lord, and kids are watching this nonsense, Pauline. The point I wanted to take up with you, we always hear these calls from Labor for the coalition to preference one nation last, your party last, because you're extremist. Yeah. Surely Labor should be calling for the Greens to be preference last too, because they seem to be more extreme on many of these issues than One Nation are, just from the other perspective.
Of course they are, Chris. They're very extreme, but Labor are getting very worried now because we're sitting on about 27-28% of the vote, and in some areas even higher than that. So Labor are really starting to feel the pinch now. They thought I was only taking the votes off the coalition. I'm not. We're taking votes off Labor. So that's why they're concerned about it. Why do you think they're bringing out all the issues now about preferencing and putting it on to the Libs? You couldn't possibly preference One Nation, not that racist party, and yet if they see they're working with the Greens and their views, they are terribly extreme to the left.
They sure are. They sure are. They're running the lines out of Tehran at the moment. Thanks for joining us again, Pauline. I appreciate it.